It retaliates over a recent Greek ruling on extradition. Ankara publicly considered scrapping a migration deal, the latest in a row, over 8 Turkish captains in Greece. The military officers fled to northern Greece after a Turkish coup attempt failed in July. Turkey requested their extradition, and the case went all the way up to Greece's Supreme Court. On January 26, the court ruled against extradition, arguing that it would lead to, quote, the curtailment of their fundamental human rights. The next day, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu called the ruling a political decision. Çavuşoğlu discussed a number of options for retaliation, quote, including the cancellation of the readmission deal with Greece. Under the deal, which first took effect in March 2016, Turkey takes back migrants who enter Greece but did not receive asylum status. A spokesperson from the EU said she believed migration cooperation would continue despite current tension. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
Arabs and Iranians are already having difficulties traveling to the United States since Friday's executive order was signed.
And this is the protection of the nation from foreign terrorist entry.
On Saturday, 5 Iraqis and 1 Yemeni were prevented from getting on a New York-destined flight in Cairo, Egypt. These traveling restrictions have affected people living in Muslim-majority countries from visiting families, traveling for work, or seeking refugees. Now, many don't even want to come to the U.S. A Yemeni-American security manager for Yemeni oil company Najid Hadari said, "It's not fair and it's not right to portray huge groups of Arabs and Muslims as possible terrorists."
Let me ask you, right after the oath of office, they give you the nuclear codes, the biscuit. Sobering moment?
When they explain what it represents and the kind of destruction that you're talking about, it is a very sobering moment. Yes, it's very, very scary in a sense.
Does it keep you up at night?
No, but I have confidence that I'll do the right thing and the right job. But it's a very scary thing.
To show we may be closer to the end of the world. It largely factors in nuclear weapons. Last night, President Trump said having the nuclear codes is sobering and scary, but he is confident he will make the right decisions. The clock had been set at 3 minutes to midnight. The 12 o'clock hour represents the destruction of human civilization. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist magazine first set the clock 70 years ago. It's been adjusted 21 times since. Chris Van Cleve is at the National Press Club in Washington, where this year's clock was just unveiled. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Just moments ago, that doomsday clock moved forward 30 seconds. It now stands at 2.5 minutes before midnight. That's the closest to midnight, or the end of the world, as it's been in 64 years, showing that this panel has real concerns about what the future may hold.
We're talking about a metaphor. We're not literally minutes from the end of the world.
Well, it is a metaphor, but we are literally minutes away from a nuclear exchange should someone press a button.
The doomsday clock ticked 30 seconds closer to midnight, in part, the experts say, because it's President Donald Trump's finger on the button.
Prior to taking office, he called for the U.S. to strengthen and expand its nuclear capability. Does the election of a new president who might be more hawkish, is that grounds for moving the clock?
Those are the issues that the Science and Security Board take into consideration. We very rarely make a decision based on an individual.
The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists debuted the clock in 1947, setting the initial time at 7 minutes to midnight because, according to the artist who designed it, quote, "it looked good to my eye." The hands came the closest to midnight, 2 minutes away, in 1953, after the U.S. and the Soviet Union tested their first hydrogen bombs.
This seems to me to be more a day for a searching of the human soul, perhaps, than for any kind of scientific celebration.
We were the furthest from annihilation in 1991,
moving the clock,
with 17 minutes to spare, after the signing of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty at the end of the Cold War. But they acknowledge they once got it wrong. The year of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, the clock moved back to 12 minutes to midnight.
That's the one that when we look back across our whole time series is the one that we'd say they didn't know all the information at that point.
If that clock ticks closer to midnight, are you going to lose any sleep?
No, I'm not going to lose any sleep. I don't think we're near an apocalypse.
Bill Gertz writes about national security for the Washington Times and is publishing a new book which details the continuing threat of nuclear weapons. He sees the doomsday clock as more of a political barometer.
In a lot of ways, the doomsday clock is being used by the liberal left to try to promote its agenda for nuclear disarmament, for greater efforts to control climate change and other elements.
We've moved it for Republicans and Democrats, and most recently under a Democratic administration.
There are some that are going to say all you're doing is creating panic at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty.
Our goal isn't to create panic, but it is to say this is very serious and there's things that we can do. And if we can have that conversation, that would be very productive.
Saying words matter, the panel expressed real concern over comments President Trump has made about nuclear weapons and climate change, but also about developments in China, Russia, North Korea, India, and Pakistan, as well as for the first time talking seriously about cyber threats, including cyber terrorism and hacking as a way to undermine democracy.
Chris, thanks.
Could they come up with another word besides doomsday? Let's start with that.
I know, it sounds like you got to be
very ominous. Yeah.
Very ominous. Yeah.
I know lots of people who worry about some nuclear accident more than they worry about anything
else.
In the economy or anything.
Stealing it or some accident or some computer going wrong, something like that.
Not long after our sit down with the president, that President Trump traveled across town to the Department of Homeland Security, where he signed those orders to begin the wall and a push to remove undocumented immigrants, including those who are facing charges in this country. But on Mexico paying for the wall, tonight's swift reaction from the Mexican president. And will he now cancel a planned visit? ABC's Cecilia Vega at the White House tonight.
President Trump today at the Department of Homeland Security signing those executive orders on immigration.
We've been talking about this right from the beginning.
The move coming after that signature campaign promise.
Build that wall! Build that wall!
In addition to building that wall, the president also vowing today to strip federal funding from so-called sanctuary cities that shield undocumented immigrants, triple the number of ICE agents, and add thousands more Border Patrol agents.
Beginning today, the United States of America gets back control of its borders, gets back its borders.
No specifics on how to pay for that wall, but President Trump putting on notice millions of undocumented immigrants, including those who have been charged with a crime even if they've not been convicted.
We are going to get the bad ones out, the criminals and the drug deals and gangs and gang members and cartel leaders. The day is over when they can stay in our country and wreak havoc.
Protests tonight in New York and by the White House, and sanctuary cities firing back.
And this city will not be bullied by this administration into abandoning our core values, and we believe we have the rule of law and the courts on our side.
And Cecilia Vega live at the White House tonight. And late word tonight, Cecilia, that the Mexican president, Peña Nieto, is now considering canceling a trip to visit President Trump. It was planned for next week.
Yes, and that comes after that announcement today. President Peña Nieto and President Trump were slated to talk border security and trade. All of that now is up in the air. David,
I don't have any advice to give to the president about that issue. We are moving ahead, as the speaker pointed out to our group yesterday, with what?
Border supplemental.
Yeah, of roughly
12 to 15.
Yeah, 12 to 15 billion dollars. So we intend to address the wall issue ourselves, and the president can deal with his relations with other countries on that issue and other issues.
I think we'll be fine.
We begin with the showdown over the wall. President Trump telling us just 24 hours ago that Americans will pay at first, but Mexico will pay us back. Tonight, the Mexican president saying that won't happen. And there is new fallout. The president, Peña Nieto, his visit to the White House next week, now canceled. ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, at the White House.
Mexico may insist it's not going to happen, but today Donald Trump was as defiant as ever.
I've said many times that the American people will not pay for the wall. And I've made that clear to the government of Mexico.
This only 24 hours after the president signed his order to begin the process of building the border wall with American money, something the president described to David as basically a down payment.
We will be in a form reimbursed by Mexico, which I've always said.
So they'll pay us back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Just hours after that interview, Mexican President Peña Nieto shot back in an address to the Mexican people.
Lo he dicho una y otra vez.
I've said it once and again, he said, Mexico will not pay for any wall, adding, Mexico offers and demands respect as the sovereign nation we are. Since day one of his campaign, Trump's relationship with Mexico has been rocky.
Who's going to pay for the wall? 100%.
Still, he traveled there to meet with Peña Nieto last year, and we asked about the wall.
The wall, is it a non-starter? Is there any chance Mexico pays for the wall?
We did discuss the wall. We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later date. This was a very preliminary meeting.
Since then, Mexico's president has been consistent. There's no way Mexico will pay.
Mexico's president said in recent days that Mexico absolutely will not pay, adding that it goes against our dignity as a country and our dignity as Mexicans. He says,
well, I think he has,
David,
I think he has to say that. He has to say that. But I'm just telling you, there will be a payment. It will be in a form, perhaps a complicated form. And you have to understand, what I'm doing is good for the United States. It's also going to be good for Mexico.
The two leaders were scheduled to meet next week at the White House. But after Mexican officials hinted they might pull out, Trump tweeted today, if Mexico is unwilling to pay for the badly needed wall, then it would be better to cancel the upcoming meeting. 3 hours later, Peña Nieto tweeted back that he had informed the White House that he would not be attending the meeting. Later, Trump insisted the cancellation was a mutual decision.
The President of Mexico and myself have agreed to cancel our planned meeting scheduled for next week. Unless Mexico is going to treat the United States fairly, with respect, such a meeting would be fruitless, and I want to go a different route.
All right, John Carl live at the White House tonight. John, the White House saying both sides canceled this meeting. We don't know who moved to call this off first. But John, Speaker Ryan today did acknowledge that American taxpayers will pay for the wall first. But this evening, an idea floated by the White House on how taxpayers might get paid back.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer floated the idea of paying for the wall with a 20% border tax on goods imported into the United States from Mexico. But late tonight, the White House clarified that that is simply one hypothetical idea. It is not something that the president has yet signed off on.
Saying they were only floating the idea. In the meantime, yes, John, as President Trump moves forward with building the wall, the man charged with protecting America's borders now ousted?
The Border Patrol chief is gone effective January 31st. We are told that he wasn't fired for cause, but simply the president wanted to move in another direction. By the way, you may...
This is one of 85 fires sweeping across central and southern Chile. There aren't enough firefighters to deal with a crisis on this scale, so in the town of Penco, people are battling the flames themselves without protective clothing, using buckets, garden hoses, and branches to stop the fires spreading. But the flames are too strong, and all they can do is watch as home after home burns.
I've lived here since I was 4, and it's shocking how everything can be destroyed in a moment. One day your home's here, the next it's gone. It's unbelievable.
The fires have been fueled by strong winds and a heat wave. They cover an area twice the size of New York City. Last week the government declared a state of emergency, but Chileans say it hasn't done enough to help them. Some confronted President Michelle Bachelet as she visited the affected areas.
I understand there is pain and anger. The only thing I can say is that the people who are working to combat the flames have done so with tremendous heroism.
In the town of Santa Olga, 1,500 homes burnt down on Wednesday night. The fire service say they were forced to abandon them to save their own lives. Residents say they've lost everything.
The flames raised all that we had. We spent 2 days fighting the fire with our neighbours, making firewalls around the whole area.
President Bachelet says some of the fires may have been started